What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we finally got our first piece of information on our new hero, Aranea. Aranea is going to be released on Friday in her Heroic Skulls event, and she is an Abyss Priest. And Abyss Priests, we had Ignis before there. And Ignis was a pretty good hero, is also one of the newer heroes of course. And she was also an Abyss Priest and a pretty good one at that. And she was used in a lot of situations. And we have to see if Aranea can steal her position or be at least similar powerful. Regarding that, in the recent times, usually the base versions of Transcendence heroes haven't been quite that overwhelming, good, how would you say it? Well, not really even decent. And mainly the issue was that the Age left some room for improvements so they could make the Transcendence version seem like a huge upgrade and be a pretty decent hero as well. And we saw that trend, I think, starting with Mockman. Mockman was very bad. And then with LDA, the base Ezreal wasn't quite that good either. Aranea from her skill sheet looks quite alright, I have to say. So that was a little bit surprising to me given the last trend. Of course we can see bad multipliers, and once again if we have a look at the ability, by the way, that's a picture of her, an Arachnid spider. Looks pretty good, pretty nice hero. And if we look at the active skill again, it's once again one of those hero skill previews that don't include any numbers, so you won't see anything like 1200% of attack or some values like this, not even the amount of enemies and skill is going to hit. So that is all something we will get to know on Friday. And of course by that we can't really get a final grasp of the capabilities of this hero. For now we can just get an idea of the skill set, and if that is maybe good or does indicate that it might be a good hero, and of course we will do that and we will try to see how well she is. She doesn't have the longest abilities text-wise, so that's already an upside. The active skill is kind of the exception, we will see that. Active skill is Blessing in Ashes. Deals damage to random enemy and burns them, dealing damage for X amount of rounds with a chance to remove attribute buff from them, meanwhile inflicts Scorching Curse on them, or for rounds afterwards releases Healing Blessing. So, burns is pretty easy, we know the burn dot, so damage over time effect is here, that's quite good. In general, burn seems to be her theme, which is nice, as we will have Phoenix synergies, and Phoenix is a good monster, so that is good. Chance to remove attribute buffs is something we saw on Forces, and he was used a lot of times in PvE because of that, and later on Mystic Fairy Freya actually got the same ability, so Forces was no longer used there as Mystic Fairy Freya was just better. In general, that's a pretty strong ability, as some heroes really rely on their buffs, and having buffs stealing like crit chance from a hero like SFX can be a huge difference in the damage output. So while that might seem like a small ability and a lot of times will be hard to notice, it is certainly good, and will certainly play a role, maybe if she sees some use in PvE or something. Then we have Scorching Curse that is inflicted on the enemies, and Healing Blessing, and for that we have to see in the second picture. They released that in 2 pictures this time, and on the bottom here we have our skill effect explanations, and Healing Blessing is really the long part, that's why I said the active skill is kind of the exception. Restores the allies with the lowest HP by a certain percent of their lost HP, okay. Meanwhile restores them HP for a set amount of rounds. If self has layers of Abyss Blessing, consumes all layers of Abyss Blessing to change the skill effect of Healing Blessing to restores all allies by a certain percent of their lost HP. Meanwhile restores them HP for rounds and increases their attack for rounds. So she basically, when she triggers Healing Blessing, restores the HP of all the lowest life hero in the team, and if she has a layer of Abyss Blessing or multiple, it will be a very strong buff, like restoring the HP on all allies, and we get an attack buff. So having an Abyss Blessing seems really beneficial here, a heal on all allies. We can't of course see if the heal of all on all allies is weaker, per hero, then the heal on one ally might be that it's like 20% of the lost HP of the lowest life hero, and then like 2% on all the heroes, which would be a bit weird, but might be possible. Having an attack buff though is always a good thing, so no arguing about that. Abyss Blessing, the layer we're looking for, is just a skill effect that enhances her skill, nothing beyond that. And the last part, the Scorching Curse. Scorching Curse, when enemies inflicted with Scorching Curse take damage, they take extra damage. Might mean that they take a certain percent more damage, in the way like Heartwatcher, for example, buffs the damage a hero takes. That would be huge. It might also be that it just says something like they take 200% of attack extra damage. So that wouldn't be quite that nice. For myself, I'm hoping for like a Heartwatcher as damage multiplier. That would definitely be huge and would be pretty cool. In any way, it's a buff that deals damage to the enemy, so nothing bad about that. Let's jump back to the active skills. So we see we inflict Scorching Curse on them, on the enemies that we hit apparently, and release Healing Blessing. So Healing Blessing, quite good. We have a heal in the active skill. We have damage to the enemy, so overall quite a nice ability, I have to say. So let's have a look at these first passive skill. The first passive skill giving us the base stats. We have attack, HP, control, immunity, speed, and damage reduction. Speed is nice for a supporter, especially if we are talking about healing. And then damage reduction is also quite a good thing. Apart from that, attack HP will be nasty once she's introduced as an enemy in like Void Campaign or something. Then she will have really huge values. So it's good though. Pretty nice. Pretty nice kit of abilities here, nothing to complain about. Then we have the passive skill 2, which changes the basic attack. Changes the basic attack to deals damage to random enemy, increases their all damage received for rounds, and restores HP for random allies. Deals damage to random enemy, of course, nothing to see here. Increases their all damage received. All damage received is a stat we saw on Azrael, on Lord of Death Azrael as well. He had it in his sublimations for the basic skill as well. In general, that's pretty good. More making the enemy receive more damage is quite nice, and his HP restore with that seems like a more than solid basic skill, I would say. Nothing really to complain about, nothing too fancy, as expected basically from a normal hero. I would think that the Transcendence version will have a more fancy basic skill, at least with the sublimation, that is. Then back to our second picture. Last passive skill. Whenever a hero is burned, grants self layers of Abyss Blessing, restores self energy, and restores all allies HP for X amount of rounds. When self takes active skill or basic attacks released by burned enemies, burns them, dealing damage for X amount of rounds, meanwhile reduces their energy and armor for X amount of rounds. So that is really a nice ability if you have heroes that can inflict burn. Sadly, we don't have that many heroes that can inflict burn in the meta. Of course, we have the Phoenix Burn. That will likely work, so that's something. But beyond that, there aren't like a lot of Transcendence heroes that do that. We have absolutely a synergy with Eos, definitely. Eos Burn is also kind of an issue. Eos doesn't burn with every active skill she does, so that is a little bit weird, but in general I would say that is a pretty strong ability. We don't have really high thresholds to get Abyss Blessing. Then again, if we take a look, yeah, the basic skill doesn't actually burn the enemy, so that's kind of a little bit bad. But if you run her in a team with like an Eos, the enemy will be burned, you will have an Abyss Blessing on her, she will restore self-energy. I wonder how many enemies we actually need to burn for her to recover full energy for an active skill. And how high the HP restoration will be, because that's also kind of interesting. I mean, like, running a burn heavy team, even as a meme team, would be kind of cool. And the other part of burning the enemy when she's attacked by a burned enemy will be a hellish ability once she's released as a PvE enemy. So will the energy reduce on hit and armor reduce on hit. That in itself, that entire passive skill will be super interesting. in the Transcendence version. I imagine it will be kind of similar, as we saw in Lord of Death as well. And seeing that active skill on a Transcendence hero might actually be insanely strong. So, the hero in itself doesn't seem bad. It doesn't have kind of that obvious flaws like the Ezreal when he was released. It seems like an all-around solid hero. I would imagine the multipliers for the skills won't be that good. But I have very high hopes for the Transcendence version, and I will see if we can test that hero. I'm kind of low on resources to do that, and I will do my best to get a test done. Still have some other accounts I could do it on if necessary, but I think she will be a great Transcendence hero and well worth going for. Maybe not as your first Transcendence hero. Well, we have to wait for that. I can't say that yet. But she does seem very solid, and I'm eager to test her in teams and to build teams around her, maybe even a meme team with like some burn synergy heroes. Valkyrie recently got imprints, so maybe that's the revival of the Valkyrie meta. Of course, kidding here, but like, would be cool. So, in any way, guys, write your opinion on the hero in the comments, and I wish you a great week, and we will see us in the next one.